This episode of Talk Your Book is proudly brought to you by Honan, providing a complete range of insurance, risk and financial solutions.
Fundies called me up, told me to take a look, but stay stubborn as bulls and talk their own book. Get the money, get the money, get the money.
Hi, I'm Chris Judd and you're watching Talk Your Book, and today we're very lucky to be joined by a crowd favourite, Emanuel Datt from Datt Capital. Emanuel, thanks very much for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
And what stock did you want to talk about today?
I wanted to talk about Dreadnought Resources that are listed on the ASX under DRE.
And what did Dreadnought do?
Dreadnought, they're a rare earth explorer, exploring West Australian assets.
And if I just have a look at the graph which Market Tech have provided and the story that tells over the last 12 months, looked like they had significant assay results at their Yin project at the end of July, which really led to a re-rate, followed by a cap raise of 12 mil at 6 cents at the start of August last year, and then a cap raise for 21.4 million at 10 cents at the start of February. So it looks like they're forming a bit of a base around that 9 cent level. Before we dig in a bit more into Dre, maybe start with the rare earth market more broadly and what the dynamics are there.
Yeah, absolutely. So rare earths, the end use is primarily magnets in a range of technological applications, things like electric vehicles, renewable energy, that sort of stuff they're used for primarily. A really interesting aspect of the industry structure is that it's heavily Chinese dominated, so about 90% or just over 90% is of production actually comes from China. So that makes the security, or securing stable supply of these essential commodities from ex-Chinese sources incredibly valuable from a strategic sense.
And when we talk about rare earths, there's a lot of different rare earths. Which are the rare earths that get spoken about as being commercial and marketable? Yeah,
sure. So I think that the highest value rare earths are a range of heavy rare earths. So I'll use the
NdPr. It's too many syllables. I agree.
I won't get into tongue twist trying to pronounce them.
Yeah.
But those are, those sort of rare earths have the sort of application in these magnets that I've spoken about. And there's a whole sort of range of rare earths. I think there are about 22 separate elements in there, so I won't name them all. And
Dre's got multiple assets across Western Australia. Maybe talk us through what those different assets are and which are the ones or one that you're focusing on in particular.
Yeah, sure. So I think the flagship asset is one called Mangaroon. So effectively that's where they've discovered these rare earth deposits. Yin in particular, as you mentioned, is the sort of flagship deposit, if you would. Yeah, as I mentioned, they've got 3 other tenements of I guess lesser importance, so we'll stick to talking about the rare earths specifically because that's where all the value is, I think.
And digging into the Yin deposit, how big is it and how much of it has been drilled so far and how much to go?
Yeah, sure. So I believe the Yin resource has been defined along a 3K strike. So effectively the company have come up with a resource of about 15 million tonnes at just over 1%. Rare earths in the shallow ironstones. Ironstones are basically a type of rock that outcrops at surface. The interesting thing about this is that the company claimed that there's a strike length of about 40k that still has to be explored, and we see plenty of precedents in the region. Just to about 20k to the north, we have another listed company known as Hastings, and they've defined about 30 million tonnes. At a lower grade of about maybe 0.9%. So that does tell you that there's definitely growth potential here, and the company itself are very active and efficient explorers, which is exactly what you want to see in an early stage company.
And maybe what sort of comparables could you put compared to the Yin deposit when you measure up to Hastings deposit? I think Hastings market cap is about $100 million more than Dre's currently, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think that Hastings, they've been around for a long time. Their resource is about double. So I think they've got about 30 million tonnes at an inferior grade. However, they don't really have that growth angle in terms of they don't really hold a huge amount of ground like Dre hold. And Dre's ground has literally never been really explored comprehensively prior to Dre actually getting on the ground. So I think, exploration is a risky endeavour, but I think that there's strong potential to grow that resource even further.
Would you expect them to get to bigger than Hastings resource by the time they finish their drilling program?
I would say so in time. I believe the company has put out an exploration target of 50 to 100 million tonnes. That's just from the ironstones, or the shallow ironstones itself. However, they are drilling other deposits that are a little bit different in nature, known as carbonatite deposits. Carbonatites are basically large feeder structures, and you think about other companies like Lynas, Mountain Weld. Their deposit is basically the world's best rare earth deposit that's currently being commercialised. Dreadnought have disclosed that they have mineralised carbonatites on their ground at Marangaroon. I believe assays are still pending, so I think that's a really that's going to be really exciting to see the results of that of this carbonatite drilling program.
And Dreadnought management speak about the second mover advantage with regards to being next door or close by to the Hastings deposit. Maybe talk about what sort of learnings they can get from Hastings in terms of their processing and why it could be looked at as a second mover advantage, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hastings, I believe, have progressed feasibility studies quite some way. And so obviously that goes through or evaluates a number of different processing techniques in their flowcharts. Ultimately being so close, it's pretty much the same type of rock that the mineral is hosted in as Hastings. So that really allows Dreadnought to use heuristics,
learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Like not ignoring, of course, that they have to do their own work, but it definitely gives them a free kick in many ways that they don't need to go down dead ends that perhaps Hastings had to go through first time.
And they talk about the NdPr to trio ratio being really high at Dreadnought. Just how high is that, and what does that compare like to other sort of commercial type operators?
Sure. Well, I think from memory, the NdPr, the heavy ratio of rare earths is about 30 to 40% off the top of my head. I think a really attractive aspect of Dreadnought as well is that it basically has a number of processing options within trucking distance without necessarily having to build its own processing plant. I think we've seen a lot of deals in this space. Iluka, for example, has teamed up with Northern Minerals, and the distance between Iluka's processing plant and Northern Minerals is 2,500 km. Yeah. Which is an incredible distance to truck ore, basically. And it does, whereas within a 500k radius of Dreadnought, you have 3 separate processing options. You've got Lynas, Iluka, and Hastings, who are sort of investigating their own processing plant. You also have a number of large players like Wyloo Metals, which is Andrew Forrest's private mineral vehicle, and getting involved in Hastings, and that really does give a strong vote of confidence to the region itself. So I think that's a very encouraging, prospect for the future.
And scanning through the sort of announcements and when management present, there's just a lot of sort of basic things they do, relatively basic things, but as an investor, as far as heuristics go, it reads really well. I think they've invested 4.8 million of their own cash into the business. Even their quote that 85% of the money, the total money they've raised, has gone into the ground. And their heavy focus on geos. There's just a lot of things there which are things most small cap investors look for in companies of this size. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the board made up of individuals that have been there and done that and are very well respected in the mineral space. I think the CEO is very driven, hungry, and what I really love, as you mentioned, is that he gives credit to his team, because ultimately, you know, a company can't be built. It's a team endeavor. Ultimately, it's not just one person out there. And I think it's, it really demonstrates that this company is being set up for long-term success by, you know, empowering the whole team and putting them out there in the public spotlight.
And how many GEOs have they got aligned to the company for a $300 million market cap company?
Yeah, I think they have about 10 or so, 10 to 12.
Which seems high, doesn't it? As far as at that size company, that seems a lot of technical expertise.
Yeah, well, it really does sort of tell you what their ambitions are and what their intent is. And I think that they, you know, they've got a number of aggressive exploration projects, from my understanding, coming up this calendar year. And I think it's going to be a very exciting time period to see what comes out of those programs. And
they're well funded. How long do you think their cash is going to last?
I would probably estimate their burn rate at 3 to 4 mil per quarter. So that gives them probably about 5 quarters worth of runway at this point. So yeah, but yeah, saying that they've just raised 20 or 21 mil, as you pointed out earlier on. And yeah, so I consider them to be well capitalized for the next 12 months.
And outside, or maybe that's what it will be, but what sort of milestones could you see them hitting in the next 6 to 12 months that could lead to a potential re-rate from here? What are you looking out for?
Sure, I think it's all about exploration at this stage, to be honest. I think that they've defined an initial resource that is, it underpins the company's value to some degree, but I think that, you know, the market wants more, and given, you know, the market cap is relatively generous, I guess, you know, when you compare it to someone like Hastings, I think the market is pricing in future success. But I think rightfully so, but ultimately time will tell if that's correct or not. But, you know, we definitely are very excited about the further prospects, you know, new discoveries and exploration success. And they are, of course, concurrently progressing, you know, commercialization studies over, you know, the core deposit initially, and then in the case of exploration success, the discovery of further deposits.
Beauty. Well, sounds like a very interesting story. Eloquent as always. Thanks very much for coming back on Talk Your Book.
No worries, Chris. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
This episode of Talk Your Book was proudly brought to you by Honan, who go beyond a transactional insurance broker to deliver better outcomes for their clients. If you're enjoying Talk Your Book, make sure you subscribe to Chris Judd Invest.